Do you ever feel like your life is on repeat? Like no matter how much you want change, you keep ending up in the same place, same struggles, same problems, same patterns, like a movie that never ends. You wake up and say, this time will be different, but somehow, it always plays out the same. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people live the same year over and over again, and call it a life. But here's the truth. If you keep doing the same things, you will always get the same results. That sounds simple, but it runs deeper than you think. This isn't just about habits. It's about the way your subconscious works. Your mind has a strange obsession with the familiar. It clings to it, even if it hurts you. The brain is designed to conserve energy. It chooses the path it already knows. That's why you find yourself drawn back to the same toxic relationship, the same kind of job, the same self-sabotaging choices. It feels safe, even though it keeps you stuck. Now here's the twist. Most people don't realize. Life doesn't just repeat because of what you do. It repeats because of what you believe. The stories you tell yourself become invisible walls. Maybe you were told you're not good enough. Maybe you failed once and convinced yourself it would always be that way. Without even noticing, you create a prison of patterns. You don't break free, because deep down, you don't expect freedom. This is why breaking the loop is so hard. You're not just fighting habits. You're fighting the hidden programming in your subconscious. This is what psychologists call repetition compulsion. It's when you unconsciously recreate the same old pain, thinking you'll somehow fix it this time, but instead, you end up stuck in the same story, over and over and over. But here's where it gets powerful. The moment you see the pattern, you start to weaken it. Awareness is the first crack in the walls. Once you notice the script your mind keeps replaying, you realize something extraordinary. You can write a new one. You don't have to live inside an endless loop. You can step out of it. You can choose something different. And the smallest shift can start a chain reaction. That's what this video is all about. If you stay with me until the end, you'll learn how to stop repeating the same reality. You'll see why your mind traps you in cycles, and more importantly, how to break them for good. We're going to explore truths that few people talk about. Truths that reveal how to rewire your life from the inside out. So let me ask you again, do you feel stuck? Because if you do, that's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your breakthrough. Stay with me, because by the time you finish this video, you'll see your reality with new eyes. And once you see it, you'll never go back. Before we talk about creating new possibilities, we need to understand why the mind holds us back. The human brain is wired for survival, not growth. It has one main job, to keep you safe. And to the mind, safety doesn't always mean happiness. Safety means familiar. Even if the familiar is painful, stressful or limiting, the brain prefers it, because it already knows the outcome. It sees the unknown as a threat. That's why so many people repeat the same mistakes, stay in the same patterns, and walk the same paths year after year. Think about it. Have you ever wondered why someone goes back to a toxic relationship, even after promising themselves never again? Or why you might stay in a job that drains you, even though you dream of more? It's not because you love suffering. It's because the brain whispers, at least I know how this feels. The unknown, new love, new work, new identity, feels risky. Your mind will create doubts, excuses, even fear, to pull you back into what it already knows. This is the hidden trap of familiarity. It creates an illusion of comfort, but in reality, it chains you to the past. Familiarity is like a soft blanket that keeps you warm, yet heavy enough that you can't move freely. It convinces you to stay still, not because it's best for you, but because it's easier than change. That's why so many people never break free. They confuse familiarity with security, and that mistake costs them their growth. But here's where it gets deeper. The subconscious mind is programmed through repetition. The more often you repeat a thought or action, the stronger it becomes wired into your brain. Over time it stops being a choice and starts being automatic. You no longer ask yourself, is this good for me? You simply do it, because that's what feels normal. This is why habits are so hard to break, and why new changes feel so uncomfortable at first. When you try to step out of the familiar, your brain treats it like danger, fear kicks in, anxiety rises. That's not because you're weak, that's because your mind is trying to protect you from what it doesn't understand. It's the same instinct that kept our ancestors alive in dangerous environments. But in modern life, this instinct doesn't protect you, it limits you. It keeps you in cycles, even when those cycles are destroying your peace. The irony is that true safety doesn't come from staying in the familiar. It comes from growth. It comes from learning, adapting, and becoming more than you were yesterday. But your brain doesn't know that. It only knows patterns. It doesn't measure joy, fulfillment, or purpose. It only measures predictability. And so the moment you step out of line, it tries to pull you back into the loop. Understanding this is powerful, because once you realize that familiarity is not the same as happiness, you can begin to question the patterns that hold you. You can start to see that the comfort zone is not safe at all, it's just familiar. And until you step beyond it, life will keep playing the same old story, no matter how badly you want a new one. It's easy to overlook the patterns in our lives, because they feel so normal. But once you step back, you begin to see the repetition everywhere. Some people stay in the same job year after year, even though they hate it. They complain about the boss, the hours, or the lack of growth. But when a new opportunity appears, they find reasons to turn it down. Why? Because the routine is familiar. They know what to expect, even if it leaves them unfulfilled. This cycle can go on for decades, until one day they look back and realize nothing ever really changed. The same thing happens in relationships. A person leaves one toxic relationship only to end up in another that feels strikingly similar. The names and faces change, but the dynamics remain the same. Arguments repeat. Disappointments repeat. The heartbreak repeats. It's not because they want that pain, but because deep down, they are unconsciously drawn to what feels familiar. The brain mistakes familiarity for safety, even when it's the very thing causing suffering. Failures also follow this same cycle. Think about the person who sets goals every new year: lose weight, save money, learn a skill. For a few weeks, motivation runs high, but soon the same excuses creep in. The same distractions return. The same lack of consistency wins. Eventually the person gives up again. Then 12 months later, the exact same resolution appears, as if the last attempt never happened. Failure becomes a pattern, not because success is impossible, but because the same approach is being repeated without change. What's even more striking is that these patterns don't always show up in dramatic ways. Sometimes they are small, quiet habits that seem harmless on the surface. Maybe it's always hitting snooze on the alarm, telling yourself you'll start tomorrow. Maybe it's scrolling endlessly on your phone whenever you feel uncomfortable, instead of sitting with your thoughts. Maybe it's saying yes to people out of guilt when you really want to say no. On their own, these habits seem minor, but over time they build invisible walls that keep you from moving forward. These small patterns can hurt just as much as the big ones, because they shape who you become day by day. Every repeated action, every repeated choice, reinforces a certain identity. If you keep putting yourself last, you slowly begin to believe that you don't matter. If you keep giving up on goals, you begin to see yourself as someone who can't follow through. These stories, built from tiny repeated behaviors, create the reality you live in. And the most challenging part: most of these patterns happen unconsciously. You don't even notice that you're choosing the same job type, the same partner type, or the same excuses. It feels automatic, like life is happening to you, instead of through you. But when you zoom in, you realize that every repetition, big or small, shapes your destiny in ways you may not see until much later. We all wear colored lenses, though most of the time we don't even realize it. These lenses are the filters through which we see the world. They are shaped by our upbringing, our past experiences, our culture, and even the stories we tell ourselves. They influence the way we see people, opportunities, and even our own potential. Two people can look at the exact same situation and walk away with completely different conclusions, simply because their lenses are tinted in different ways. Think about it like this: if you're wearing red-tinted glasses, everything you see will appear in shades of red. You might argue with someone who sees things in blue, because to you, red is the only reality. But the truth is, neither perspective is the full picture. It's just a filter. And the problem is, when we mistake the lens for reality, we end up trapped in repeating patterns. We think the world is a certain way, when in fact we are only seeing it through the narrow filter of our own conditioning. These lenses show up in many forms. If you were once betrayed in a relationship, you might start seeing every new partner through the lens of suspicion. Even when someone is genuine, your filter tells you they might hurt you. If you failed at something in the past, that lens might whisper, "Don't try again, you'll only fail like before." Over time, these lenses don't just color how you see life, they create self-fulfilling prophecies. You expect disappointment, so you attract it. You expect rejection, so you notice it everywhere. The lens shapes the pattern, and the pattern shapes your life. What makes this so challenging is that most of us believe we're seeing reality as it truly is. We don't recognize the filter. We think, this is just how things are. But what if it isn't? What if the struggles, limitations, and repeated cycles aren't facts, but the result of looking at life through a distorted lens? That's the insight many never reach, and it's why they keep reliving the same story. To escape the pattern, you have to remove the lenses. That means questioning the thoughts you take for granted. It means asking, is this belief true, or is it just a filter I've been wearing? Removing the lenses doesn't happen overnight. It requires awareness, honesty, and the courage to see without distortion. Sometimes it means facing uncomfortable truths. Sometimes it means realizing that what you thought was protection is actually a cage. The moment you take off the colored lenses, the world changes. Suddenly, opportunities you couldn't see before come into view. People appear different, not because they've changed, but because you're no longer projecting your old filters onto them. Life itself opens up in ways you didn't believe were possible, and the repeating patterns that once seemed unbreakable begin to lose their grip, because you're finally seeing things as they are, not as your past has trained you to see them. Behind every loop in life, there is usually a hidden emotion waiting to be uncovered. Patterns don't repeat themselves without reason. They are often fueled by feelings that were never faced, never expressed, or never healed. On the surface, it may look like you keep choosing the wrong job, the wrong partner, or the wrong habit. But when you look deeper, you'll often find an emotion that silently drives those choices. Until you face it, the loop will continue, no matter how hard you try to change your actions. Take fear, for example. Fear can disguise itself in many ways. You may fear rejection, so you stay in situations where you never have to put yourself fully on the line. You may fear failure, so you never take the leap into something new. On the surface, it looks like indecision or procrastination, but beneath it, fear is the hidden force keeping you locked in the same cycle. Until you address the fear, no amount of willpower will set you free. Shame is another powerful hidden emotion. If you carry shame from past mistakes, you may unconsciously believe you don't deserve better. That belief drives you into choices that match your inner narrative. You may settle for less, tolerate disrespect, or sabotage opportunities. To the outside world, it might look like bad luck or poor decisions, but at the root, shame is quietly steering the wheel. Unless you recognize and release it, you'll keep repeating situations that reinforce that old feeling of unworthiness. Anger also hides behind many loops. Sometimes we carry anger from childhood, from betrayal, or from years of feeling overlooked. Instead of expressing it, we bury it. But buried anger doesn't disappear. It shows up in patterns. Maybe it's in the form of choosing relationships where conflict is constant. Maybe it's through self-destructive habits that punish yourself. You think the pattern is about the circumstances, but really, it's about unresolved anger demanding to be seen. Even sadness and grief can hold you in place. If you never allowed yourself to fully grieve a loss, that grief becomes the background of your life. You might keep chasing distractions or repeating behaviors that numb the pain. On the surface, it looks like busyness or avoidance. But deep down, it's sadness looping until you finally stop to feel it. This is why just changing surface-level actions rarely works. You can switch jobs, end relationships, or set new goals. But if the hidden emotion remains untouched, the pattern simply returns in a new form. The details change, but the cycle stays the same. That's why so many people feel like they're running in circles. They focus on fixing the outside without addressing the inside. The real work is to pause and look inward. Ask yourself, what am I truly feeling beneath this pattern? What emotion have I been avoiding? Once you find it, you begin to see why the loop exists. And the moment you give that emotion the space to be acknowledged, you weaken the cycle that has been running your life from the shadows. Sometimes we recreate old pain without even realizing it. It sounds strange, almost irrational. Why would anyone choose to relive something that once hurt them deeply? Yet this is something the human mind does more often than we think. Freud called it repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to repeat painful experiences from the past, as if replaying them might somehow lead to a different outcome. Instead of healing, we end up stuck in the same suffering, living out the same script with different characters and different settings, but the same emotional storyline. You can see this in relationships. A person who felt abandoned as a child may find themselves repeatedly drawn to partners who are emotionally unavailable. Each time they think, this will be different. This person will finally give me the love and attention I need. But the cycle ends the same way, with rejection, distance or loss. The unconscious mind is trying to master the original pain by recreating it, as if it could finally rewrite the ending. Yet in reality, the pain is only reinforced. The same cycle can appear in careers. Someone who grew up feeling unworthy might consistently choose jobs where they are undervalued or underpaid. Deep down, they are replaying an old wound, unconsciously seeking situations that confirm the identity they've carried since childhood. Even if opportunities for better roles appear, they might self-sabotage, turn them down, or leave too soon, because the unfamiliar doesn't match the script their mind keeps running. This compulsion doesn't stop at relationships or work. It can show up in everyday habits. A person who was criticized harshly might continue to criticize themselves long after those voices are gone. They might replay the same self-talk in their head, reinforcing the very pain they once received from others. Another example is someone who faced instability as a child. Even when they achieve stability as an adult, they may unconsciously disrupt it, quitting jobs suddenly, ending friendships, or creating chaos, because chaos feels like home. What makes repetition compulsion so difficult to break is that it operates beneath awareness. On the surface, it feels like life is simply repeating itself, as if destiny keeps dealing the same cards. But the truth is, the unconscious mind is leading the way, steering us back into the same lessons, the same wounds, hoping that this time it will be resolved. Of course, without awareness, nothing changes. The outcome repeats, because the hidden pain remains unhealed. Freud believed that this cycle was a way for the psyche to gain mastery over trauma. It's as if the mind says, if I replay this enough times, maybe I can finally control it. But instead of liberation, we find ourselves prisoners of the very thing we're trying to escape. We keep circling back to old pain, because we haven't yet faced it directly. Until we recognize this pattern, repetition compulsion keeps us tied to the past, disguising old wounds as new experiences. The first step is noticing. Change doesn't begin with force or with endless effort. It begins with awareness.
Most of the time, the patterns that run our lives are invisible because they've been with us for so long. They feel natural, automatic, and unquestionable. You wake up, act the same way, think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, and believe this is just who you are. But the moment you pause and actually notice the loop, something shifts. Awareness creates space, and in that space you gain the power to choose differently. Seeing the pattern clearly is like turning on the lights in a dark room. For years you might stumble around, bumping into the same furniture, wondering why you keep getting hurt. Then suddenly, the light comes on, and you see exactly what's in front of you. The obstacles didn't disappear, you simply became aware of them. With that awareness, you can move differently. You no longer crash into the same objects because you know where they are. Patterns in life work the same way. They lose their power the moment you recognize them for what they are. This recognition doesn't require judgment. In fact, judgment keeps the cycle alive. If you notice that you're repeating the same toxic relationship, the same self-sabotaging habit, or the same fear-driven choice, the key is not to shame yourself. Shame only drives the pattern deeper into hiding. Instead, you simply acknowledge, I see this. I see what I've been doing. I see the story I've been repeating. That simple act of awareness already breaks the automatic spell. The unconscious loop becomes conscious, and now you can do something about it. Take an example of procrastination. You tell yourself every time, I'll do it later. Later becomes tomorrow, tomorrow becomes next week, and the cycle repeats. At first, it feels like laziness or lack of discipline. But the moment you pause and notice the pattern, you might realize it's not laziness at all, it's fear. Fear of failing, fear of judgment, or even fear of success. By naming the pattern, you take away its hidden control. What was once an unconscious loop is now something you can observe, understand, and eventually change. The same applies in relationships. If you found yourself in repeated heartbreak, noticing the similarities between your choices can be eye-opening. You may realize you're attracted to the same personality type or drawn to the same dynamic. Seeing that clearly doesn't instantly solve it, but it stops you from walking blindly into the same trap. When you know the pattern, you can pause before repeating it and ask, do I really want to choose this again? That question alone can redirect your path. Noticing also shifts your identity. Instead of being the victim of repeated experiences, you become the observer. The observer has power. The observer can choose, and that single shift from being inside the loop to seeing the loop changes everything. Once a pattern is visible, it can no longer control you in the same way. Its grip weakens, and your freedom begins. Suggesting small changes may not sound powerful, but that is where transformation begins. Most people wait for the big shift, the dramatic breakthrough that turns their life upside down. But the truth is, life doesn't usually change in one giant leap. It changes through small consistent choices that slowly build momentum. Acting differently, even in the smallest ways, disrupts the cycle that has kept you trapped. It signals to your mind and body that things no longer have to be the same. Imagine someone who has always avoided speaking up in meetings because they fear rejection. For years, they stay silent, and the pattern reinforces itself. A small change could be as simple as sharing one short idea, even if their voice shakes. It might feel strange and uncomfortable, but that tiny action begins to weaken the old loop. It proves to the mind that new behavior is possible, and the world doesn't collapse when they step out of the familiar. Over time, those small moments stack into confidence. Think of another example, someone who always starts their day rushing, already stressed before leaving the house. The cycle repeats daily. A small change could be waking up 10 minutes earlier to breathe, stretch, or write down intentions. It doesn't require a massive lifestyle overhaul, just a subtle shift. Yet that shift changes the tone of the entire day. That single act, repeated, slowly rewires the brain to associate mornings with calm, rather than chaos. Small changes work because they bypass the mind's natural resistance. The brain fears big dramatic shifts, but it tolerates small experiments. Eating one healthier meal a day doesn't terrify the subconscious. Choosing to take a short walk instead of scrolling endlessly on your phone doesn't feel like a threat. But these subtle choices accumulate, and soon you find yourself living differently, without forcing a radical transformation overnight. The key is to act differently, even when it feels strange. That strangeness is not a sign you're wrong, it's proof you're leaving the comfort zone. Familiarity always feels natural, even if it's harmful. Unfamiliar actions feel awkward because they're new, but every new habit begins in discomfort. The first time you ride a bike, it feels clumsy. The first time you learn a skill, it feels unnatural. Change is no different. The strangeness is simply a sign that you're growing beyond the loop. For someone repeating the same toxic relationships, a small change could be setting one boundary, even if it feels unnatural. For someone stuck in financial cycles, it might be saving a small amount instead of spending it all. For someone trapped in self-doubt, it could be writing one affirmation, or celebrating one small win. None of these actions look dramatic from the outside, but they send a signal to the subconscious. The script is being rewritten. And once the script begins to change, the cycle can no longer play out in the same way. Each small choice is like a crack in the wall of repetition, and with time, those cracks let the light in. Thought alone is not enough. Before transformation can truly take root, it must move beyond the mind and sink into the body. Many people mistake intellectual understanding for actual change. They read books, they attend seminars, they repeat affirmations. But when stress hits, when fear rises, the body reacts with old patterns. The nervous system holds on to habits long after the mind claims to have moved on. This is why people feel like they know better, but still fall into the same cycles. It is because change that stays in the head has no power to rewrite what the body has memorized. The body remembers. Every disappointment, every heartbreak, every loss has carved grooves into it like water shaping stone. Those grooves become the automatic responses we live by, flinching at rejection, shutting down when conflict appears, craving what once soothed us. The mind can argue all day, but the body responds instantly, almost without asking. That is why embodying new beliefs matters. To truly shift, you must feel the belief in your skin, your breath, your movement. It is not enough to say, "I am confident." You must stand as though you are confident, breathe as though you are safe, and let that energy radiate until the body learns a new story. When you embody a new belief, you give your nervous system evidence. It begins to understand that the danger it once prepared for is not here anymore. Imagine someone who has always carried the belief, "I am unworthy." They can think new thoughts, repeat, "I am enough" in the mirror, but if their shoulders are still slumped, their voice still hesitant, their body still bracing for rejection, the old program runs the show. Now picture that same person deliberately lifting their head, expanding their chest, speaking with steady breath. Suddenly, the body starts to align with the thought, and a new cycle forms. This process is not about pretending. It is about training your body to support your mind's intention. When you embody the new belief, you are showing your subconscious what truth feels like. Over time, the repetition of this embodied state becomes familiar. The body shifts from fear to trust, from lack to abundance, from unworthiness to self-assurance. It is not theory anymore. It is lived reality. The real transformation is when thought, emotion and body move together in harmony. The mind sparks the vision, the heart fuels it with emotion, and the body anchors it in action. Without the body, change remains abstract, fragile and easily broken. With embodiment, change becomes solid, lived and undeniable. This is where freedom begins, not in wishing for a new life, but in walking as though you already live it. When the body feels the new belief, it no longer clings to the old, and the cycle finally begins to break. Picture the person you could be. See them clearly, the way they walk, the way they carry themselves, the way they move through life with confidence and calm. That version of you already exists in potential. Let that image guide your actions today. Each step you take, each choice you make, can bring you closer to embodying that reality. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful insights to help you grow and transform.